up on the Weekend Morning Report, we're talking all things Tropical Storm Lee, as the storm is expected to bring flooding, power outages, beach erosion, and more to many communities around the state. It's expected to be the worst down east, although Maine's top power companies are expecting widespread outages. We'll cover all of that and more over the next 2 hours. Storm Center on the Weekend Morning Report starts now. Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Chloe Tebow. It is Saturday, September 16th. We have crews in several parts of the state this morning tracking Lee as the storm moves in closer to the coast. Aaron Myler is live at Camp Ellis this morning. Dana Osgood is in Bar Harbor and Donovan Lynch is in Washington County. We'll check in with them in a few minutes, but first we'll start with Todd in the Weather Center. Good morning, Todd.
Yeah, hi there, Chloe. This just in from the National Hurricane Center. Lee is no longer a hurricane. Not that it really matters. I mean, we're still going to get wind and rain, and it doesn't really matter if it's named a tropical system or not at this point. But it's starting to get some fronts in here and become more of a nor'easter type storm, so it'll still be powerful. Winds are still at 80 miles per hour near the center of it, with gusts that are higher than that. But again, Lee no longer a tropical system. Starting to see those outer bands work into the coastline, and rain is falling right along the coast. It's not terribly heavy. This is all generally on the light to moderate side, but it's still wet from Portland down the pike into York and Kittery, and then that's stretching inland a little bit into interior parts of York County and also Cumberland and Androscoggin County. We go up the coast a little bit. We have some heavier pockets of rain moving out of Penobscot Bay into the mid-coast, and the heaviest rain that we're seeing right now is definitely in eastern Maine. Bangor, you are wet. We're seeing some downpours out through Washington County as those heavier bands rotate in from the east. The winds are whipping around a little bit, but it's more bark than bite right now. We're only gusting up to about 30 miles per hour. We haven't had too many power outages yet, just a few out there, but I do expect the winds to continue to increase throughout the morning, and we'll start to gust into the 40s as we approach the middle of the day. So this morning will be showery, it'll be cool out there, and it'll be blustery. Heaviest bands stay confined to eastern Maine. In fact, the dry air is going to win out here across the west and south. This afternoon, there won't be much rain around at all, and we may actually see a little sunshine late in the day, while down east Maine continues to get those stronger and heavier rain bands, and that's where our flooding concerns are, specifically Washington County. We'll completely clear out across the state later on tonight, and things will be a million times better tomorrow. So this morning, rainy with increasing wind, 60 degrees. We'll have showers for the middle of the day, and that's when we're going to be getting those strongest gusts. That's when our highest potential for power outages will be in the mid-60s. And then the showers come to the end this afternoon. It'll still be windy through sunset, and then that wind settles after that. Temperatures remain in the 60s. We'll go over the extended forecast, more to what to expect today coming up as well. But we're going to go outside, do a few live shots. We're going to start with Donovan Lynch, who's live in down east Maine and Cutler. Hey there, Donovan.
Hey, Todd. Well, we're here in the town of Cutler, about 20 miles west of the Canadian border at New Brunswick, and we're seeing a lot of driving rain with sporadic gusts of wind coming to us mostly from inland areas. We're seeing the wind just coming in our face. The ocean right behind me, you can see some boats are still in the ocean, and things have really changed over the past couple hours. We came here to Washington County at about 10 o'clock last night, and it was really a lot of wind but no rain yet. Then at about midnight, I started hearing some rain on the windowsill, and now we have both, and a gust is coming my way right now. As far as damages, we're seeing some leaves in the road, but no down branches as of yet on the drive from Machias down here to Cutler. As for flooding, again, we haven't really seen anything more than just pooling of rain. We're going to continue to keep you updated. We're going to be in Washington County all throughout the day. We're going to be following this storm as it bears down on down east Maine. Now we're going to go to Aaron Myler, who's in Saco. Aaron, hi.
Yeah, hey Donovan, I am in Saco in Camp Ellis right now. We are on the water, just right out on the docks here. You can see it's pretty breezy here at times. It's calmed down just a second ago, but we had wind gusts over 40 miles an hour here just a few seconds ago. Now, along with this, the big concern here is instead going to be some coastal erosion. Some of the worst in the state is here, around 2 to 3 feet a year. They did a replenishment effort in the 2010s to kind of rebuild that, and then we're concerned that this could kind of erode the coastline back down. We have homes that are just on the water here, and that's going to cause some issues potentially. We'll continue to watch that here as we go through the morning. Once it brightens up a bit more, we'll head down to the beach to show you guys that. But that is going to be one of the main concerns. You can see the winds picking up here, and this is the general story. The rain's not too bad. We're not really seeing too much in the way there yet, but we are seeing the winds pick up here and there as we move through your morning. So this is going to be something we continue to watch. We'll check in on those wave heights as well. Now, astronomical tides are low today, and low tide is hitting here in the next hour or so. So that's going to be good for the moment, but as we move into the rest of your day, the tides are going to pick up a little bit more. So we will see that increasing a little bit here as we move through the rest of your day here and those winds continue along. But at the moment, everything's still pretty good. I've checked in with some local authorities and they aren't seeing any issues just yet, which is all a great sign. In Camp Ellis, meteorologist Aaron Myler, News Center, Maine. Let's send it back to you, Chloe.
All right, thank you, Aaron, and Donovan, stay safe out there. Maine is in a state of emergency because of the anticipated effects this storm will have on communities around the state. The president has also approved a pre-disaster emergency declaration, which will expedite federal assistance to Maine. Governor Janet Mills spoke about storm preparations at the Maine Emergency Management Headquarters yesterday afternoon. She says her main concerns are tree damage, power outages, and flooding. Here's some of what she wanted to say to Mainers about being prepared for this storm.
Keep your cell phone charged so you can stay in touch. Keep your electronic equipment charged up. Have alternative charging resources available if you can. And stay in touch with the weather forecast and the MEMA directives so you'll know where things are going and when they're going in that direction. Don't wait till there's damage. Have food, water, pet supplies, prescription medications ready already. Don't wait until nighttime because you may lose electricity. You won't be able to find things.
The governor warned that some communities could be without power for several days if we see massive impacts. So far, there aren't many outages at all, but that is expected to change as the winds pick up. Crews from Maine's largest utility companies are staged around the state as they get ready for the storm. Representatives for Versant Power say they're increasing staffing and have added line crews to help with restoration. Central Maine Power officials say they've done the same. CMP officials also say they can call in crews from as far as New York and Connecticut to help if needed. A reminder, never touch a downed power line or a tree that's in contact with one. If you see damage, you should just report it. Now, because we're in a state of emergency, employers in Portland are required to pay hazard wages to employees who have to show up for work. This is thanks to a voter referendum. When the governor declared the emergency on Thursday, the city's minimum wage increased to $21 an hour. Pay for tipped workers, like waiters, is up to $10.50 per hour. The pay rates will stay that way until the state of emergency is lifted. Hazard pay is not in effect for remote workers under a teleworking arrangement. Members of the Portland Chamber of Commerce say you can give them a call if you have any questions. We are in Storm Center mode all morning, but after the break, we'll take a look at some other stories making headlines around Maine, including a shooting in Saco. We'll be right back.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia, call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.
Custom Ink helps us celebrate and drive our students' achievements with custom gear. They love Custom Ink's different styles and designs. We love how Custom Ink makes the process simple with their easy-to-use design lab, expert artists ready to help, and unbeatable customer service. Custom Ink allows our kids to show everyone their accomplishments and the pride they have in our school. When we place an order, I know they got our back, so we can focus on the kids.
Custom Ink has hundreds of products to help you feel connected. Upload your logo or start your design today at customink.com.
Recipes that will wow the whole family. Cooking with Styles.
Several organizations in Portland are protesting the city's decision to close encampments for people experiencing homelessness. People gathering at City Hall yesterday said they decided to demonstrate after seeing the city clear the Four River encampment. They say they also want to stop the city from closing down another encampment at the Park and Ride lot on Marginal Way. Protesters say they believe city officials don't understand the effect that clearing these setups has on the people living there. But city councilors say they do, and that they're working to find other ways to help.
It takes time to have the conversation around getting into shelter and accepting that shelter, and so I think that sweeping campsites doesn't allow time for that work to happen.
We want to house everyone. I'd love to house everyone, but that's not reality right now. We need to focus on a sanctioned encampment and just support everyone there and stop just kicking the rock down the road.
City officials say they'll review the Four River encampment closure and adjust the city's outreach team's efforts before starting work on the Marginal Way encampment. One of those adjustments could be putting more beds into the Homeless Services Center on Riverside Street. Maine State Police detectives are investigating a homicide and suicide in the town of Hiram. Troopers say they found the bodies of Stephanie Ranieri and Chad Adams outside of a home on Clemens Cove Wednesday afternoon. Officers are responding to a report of a disturbance at the time. Investigators say the two were in a relationship at some point in the past. That is all we know about the situation so far. Police in Saco say a dispute between neighbors ended in gunfire near Thornton Academy. This happened yesterday morning on Hutchins Street. Police say Eugene D'Alessandro Jr. fired several shots while arguing with a neighbor. We're told no one was hurt. D'Alessandro faces a felony gun charge, and he is expected in court next month.
All right, this just in, Lee no longer a tropical system. Not that that matters at all. It's still going to pack a punch and be like a nor'easter with wind and rain for the state of Maine. I will break the entire storm down for you coming up right after this.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia, call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.
Vodka soda with Wheatley. Wheatley, so good I drink it. This song right here is for the red, white, and blue. You got good taste, and you drink like it too. Wheatley, so good I drink it. Wheatley, American vodka.
There's so much good news out there if you just take a moment to see it. Our Threads.
Welcome to our streaming channel. Here you can catch up on all the latest news, weather, and sports you need. Countless hours of fresh, original content you can watch at any speed. Everything you love about local, plus so much more.
Real victims.
She didn't deserve this.
Real crimes.
This was a homicide.
And real justice.
Now it all makes sense, and boom, we got him.
True Crime Network. Download the free app.
Loved ones taken too soon. Their killers still walking free. But for these victims, justice is finally coming. Finally Caught. Now streaming free on the True Crime Network app.
In all these murder cases, you feel like you start to know the person.
You really do this work to speak for those who can't speak for themselves.
Real victims.
She didn't deserve this.
Real crimes.
This was a homicide.
And real justice.
My gut was telling me that this was the person.
Now it all makes sense, and boom, we got him.
There's only one destination. Just stream your fascination. True Crime Network. Download the free app.
Mom Squad every week right here on your streaming app.
We are back 5:16 this Saturday morning. I was just saying, we were talking, it's been a busy week for you, Todd.
Yeah, it's been a long week. I mean, there's been a lot of obvious talk about Lee, when it was going to get here, what it was going to do to us. And today is finally that day, and it is going to impact the area rather significantly, especially in down east Maine.
Right.
That's going to be closest to the strongest winds and the heaviest rain. Now, Lee is no longer a tropical system, but I don't want to change the messaging at all. We're still going to end up with wind that's going to whip around from the north all day long, and there's still power outage concerns all day long, especially for down east Maine, where we get the strongest wind gusts. A wet morning for all of us. Showers, though, will be tapering off this afternoon. The flooding risk confined to Washington County and along the Canadian border. That's where we could see over 2 inches of rain. Elsewhere, rain not a big player. What is a big player, the waves. We're going to have huge breakers. They're growing. The seas are right now out in the Gulf of Maine. So beach erosion at high tide, which is noon. And thankfully, as Aaron Myler was telling us, the astronomical tide right now is really low. So we can actually absorb a 2 or so foot storm surge and still end up with minor flooding along the coastline. There will be a lot of splashover from these big waves, and yeah, some of those adjacent shore roads might get a little debris on them, but it's not a widespread problem at all. So again, Hurricane Lee is no longer a hurricane. It's what we call post-tropical. It's starting to form fronts. And again, it's just in the messaging here. Those are just semantics. We're on the western flank getting wind and getting some rain now. The track will take it right up into the Yarmouth area and then on out through the rest of the Canadian Maritimes. But the wind field has expanded to the west, and so are these showers working in these outer bands. You can see them kind of working through the coastline from east to west, and they'll continue to do so. Take you into southern Maine, where the rain is generally light right now, but it is fairly steady. Portland stretching into York County and all the way through Sebago Lake up through Lewiston, Auburn. You're seeing some sprinkles and some showers, Augusta too. A couple of heavier showers on the mid-coast coming out of Penobscot Bay, but easily the steadiest and heaviest rain is from Bangor all the way over to the Canadian border in Lebec and Eastport and places like that. And this is where we are going to see the most significant rainfall. So let's cover that part of the story first with our timeline through 9 o'clock this morning. Those rain bands will be working back to the west. They're going to encounter a lot of dry air in western Maine and New Hampshire, and they'll tend to break up and become more showery by the middle of the day, while intense rain will be falling over eastern Maine for the midday hours and into the afternoon. But during the afternoon, I mean, there's not going to be much rain falling at all, and I wouldn't be shocked if we start doing a little clearing, especially near the New Hampshire border. Rain will completely move out of here by midnight tonight, and it will no longer be a problem, and rivers and streams will recover, etc. The flood threat is greatest out here in Washington County, where we could pick up 2 to as much as 4 inches of rain. With that said, there is possibilities that we could have a few detours on some of our roads if we get some washouts. Let's check on the winds in New England. We are seeing tropical storm force winds in P-Town, Provincetown out on the Cape, and also Nantucket, where they're gusting close to 50. Here in Maine, though, it's more bark than bite right now. It looks impressive as you look outside and see the leaves kind of rustling and the branches flowing back and forth. But we're only gusting right now up to about 30 miles per hour, and so far, there have been very few power outages, although I did lose my power last night for a little bit. So the middle of the day is when I'm focused for the strongest winds. At that point, we'll be gusting over 40 miles per hour, perhaps as high as 60, and that would occur in down east Maine. But because of the leaves and the saturated ground, the concern for power outages will be with us all day long. The winds will settle just after sunset, and there'll be a non-player tomorrow. It'll be much calmer and actually a really beautiful day. Real quickly, check out these wave heights out there in the Atlantic, 25 feet, 36 feet off of Nova Scotia. We're getting some double-digit wave heights entering the Gulf of Maine, and they're propagating toward the coastline. So high tide could be a problem with beach erosion. It will for sure, and a little bit of coastal flooding too. Marine forecast, seas will grow up to about 20 feet. Winds out of the north gusting to 50 knots. Tropical storm warnings up all day long. So here's that 7-day, rainy and windy today, obviously, with the impacts from Lee, but tomorrow's going to be great. Hope you enjoy the end of the weekend there. Sunshine 75 to 80. It does look wet now, Monday into Tuesday, with a little storm coming through the northeast, but it still looks awesome for the end of next week. Perhaps a taste of fall for a day or two. Some chilly mornings, like in the lower 40s in some towns.
All right, we'll take that.
Yeah, it'll be refreshing.
Awesome. All right, and now we're going to toss to meteorologist Dana Osgood. She is in Bar Harbor, keeping an eye on conditions there. Dana, what's it looking like?
Hi, Chloe and Todd. I'm here at the Bar Harbor waterfront. As you heard, Lee has been downgraded to a post-tropical storm, but as you might be able to see, it is very rainy and very windy here. I've got my anemometer out here, and I'm getting some water in my eyes as well. And so far, we've been gusting to around 20 miles per hour, though at the airport, it did register a 31 mile per hour gust earlier today. It started raining here at about 2 in the morning. And according to the airport, we've received about 0.2 of an inch of rain so far, but we still have a lot more rain that's going to move through our area for the rest of the day, so we are expecting a lot more rain after that. We've seen some pooling of water around the parking lots here, but overall we've yet to see any significant flooding. But again, we have a lot more rain to go later today, so we will keep you updated on all of that. So like Todd mentioned in his forecast, here in down east Maine, we're expecting heavy rain and high wind gusts for most of the rest of the day today into the overnight hours as well. You can kind of see here the ray that's going right across my face. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good wind gust. Unfortunately, I didn't have my anemometer up in time, so obviously here the conditions are pretty rainy and pretty wet, so if you're going to be doing any traveling, I would really advise keeping that to a minimum. It's a very good day to just kind of hunker down and stay inside. We haven't seen any power outages come through here yet, but we are expecting that that might be something to come up later today. So Lee is expected to move through relatively quickly, all things considered. So we're going to start drying out here just after midnight as we get into Sunday. But overall, down here by the waterfront, it is rainy and it is windy. So back to you, Chloe.
Great, Dana Osgood, thank you for braving the elements this morning. Hope you can dry off now, take a little break. All right, like Dana said, this storm is having a major impact on travel this morning. Officials with the Portland Jetport say a majority of flights that were scheduled to arrive and depart today have been canceled. A message on the Jetport's website says its airline partners and the FAA are monitoring the forecast and will operate flights when it's safe to do so. Now, it's the same situation at the Bangor International Airport. Only a few flights in and out of Maine are still listed as on time, and you should make sure to keep an eye on flight status updates if you're supposed to fly today or tomorrow. Taking a break from storm coverage, we'll dive into how one school district in Maine is working on diversity, equity, and inclusion in its classrooms. That's next.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia, call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.
35,000. That is the average number of decisions a mom makes every single day. They say it takes a village to raise a child. We say it takes a squad. Mom Squad, every week, right here on your streaming app. Mom Squad, every week, right here on your streaming app.
Your team every day, free 24/7 Locked On Sports today.
School administrators in Bangor are trying to find ways to address disparities and provide pathways to success for a diverse student population. The school district adopted a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging program this year. Officials say over the last 2 years, 20% of the student body is non-white, and that percentage is expected to keep growing. From transportation and meals to language and cultural assimilation needs, the program is designed to meet students where they're at.
Really making sure that students see their experiences reflected within their classroom, students feel that their families are celebrated, and students' needs are met. And that's really what equity is. It's not assuming everyone needs the same thing, but it's really personalizing a student's educational experience.
School officials say their ultimate goals are to increase student participation in and out of the classroom and to raise graduation rates. Looking ahead to next weekend now for the 15th annual Dempsey Challenge. It's a fundraiser for the Dempsey Center in Lewiston, which is dedicated to helping those impacted by cancer with various services. For 5 years now, the Dempsey Center has offered its free services to people with cancer and their families in 2 locations, Lewiston and South Portland. But there isn't much room to grow in South Portland, and Communications Director Caitlin Davis says their list of clients has doubled in the last year. There's a space in Rock Row in Westbrook under construction that she says they're hoping to move into by this time next year, giving them a lot more room for group counseling, fitness classes, massage, and acupuncture.
More and more people are learning about what it is that we do here at the Dempsey Center, and unfortunately, the incidences of cancer are on the rise. With COVID, we saw fewer people going to the hospital for those regular checkups, and now that things have started to open back up after the pandemic, more and more people are seeing a diagnosis that, maybe it could have been caught sooner, or maybe it's something that could have been prevented before it turned into something that required more treatment.
The Dempsey Challenge, which supports services offered for free at the Dempsey Center, is happening on just one day this year. We'll have live coverage from the event next Saturday. Our Storm Center coverage continues this morning as we track Lee. That's next at 5:30 on the Weekend Morning Report.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia. Call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.
We want to pull at your heartstrings with hard threads. There's so much good news out there if you just take a moment to see it. Watch Hard Threads every week.
Daily Blast Live is more than a talk show. They're family. The hosts are relatable, entertaining, and authentic.
We're all going to be like, what?
Engaging the audience with powerful stories and talking to the stars.
Turn up the notch on that.
It's like I'm on the verge of tears.
Thank you so much for doing this.
It's so interesting.
It's time to be a part of the DBL family.
I'm so proud of our DBL Nation.
Me too. Watch DBL on our station's streaming app.
Welcome to our streaming channel. Here you can catch up on all the latest news, weather, and sports you need. Everything you love about local, plus so much more.
Mom Squad, every week, right here on your streaming app.
We are back now, just about 5:31 this Saturday morning. Todd is obviously in for Aaron in the studio because Aaron is outside, and we're all keeping an eye on Lee.
Todd's too old to go outside and get battered by wind and rain, Chloe. I guess that summarizes that. As of 5 a.m., the National Hurricane Center, in their updated account of Lee, has determined that Lee is no longer a tropical system. It's formed fronts and looks more like a nor'easter and is going to act like one now. But the messaging is still there. We're still going to get wind and we're still going to get rain. The core of Lee still present and heading right up to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, Bay of Fundy, New Brunswick, and then over Prince Edward Island, and then gone. We're getting some of the outer rain bands from Lee that is starting to stretch inland a little bit too. A lot of this rain is on the lighter side, but it is getting into the Sebago Lake area. All of York County is getting some drops. Lewiston, Auburn, Augusta, you've seen a little bit of wet weather. It's a little steadier and occasionally heavier coming off of Penobscot Bay into the mid-coast, but easily, right now, the heaviest rain exists from Bangor all the way to the Canadian border, and you can see some yellows in here. And that's where I think the flooding concerns will be most of the day as we get over an inch, maybe even over 2 inches of rain out in Washington County. Right now, it's breezy out there, but it's more bark than bite. We don't have too many power outages, just a few, and we're seeing gusts to about 30 miles per hour. But I expect the winds to ramp up. In midday, they'll likely gust over 40 miles per hour, and we will end up with more in the way of power outages because of that. So we go through the timeline this morning. This is 9 a.m., still looking at these rain bands working in from the east to the west. But there's a lot of dry air over Maine, and they're going to chew away at these rain bands. In fact, this afternoon, I do not expect much rain at all for the western half of the state, and we could even end up with a little sunshine towards sunset. We might even get a dramatic sunset like we had last night. There was a ton of pictures on social media from that sunset. Out east, though, down east areas and across Aroostook County, the steady rain will continue, although that also exits by about midnight, and everyone will clear out for tomorrow, and we get a lot of sunshine. So, rain out there this morning with increasing wind, temp around 60. Showers for the middle of the day, and that's when we get the strongest wind gusts, 64. The showers end this afternoon, but it remains windy all the way through sunset, and then the winds will settle down after that, and tomorrow will be much calmer. All right, let's bring Aaron Myler into this discussion. Yes, he is out live. We did send him out there while I stay in here, stay dry and comfortable. Aaron's in Saco, Camp Ellis. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing pretty okay out here, Todd. I mean, you can see it's really not raining too much, which is the big thing over, like you were just saying, on the western side of the state. And what we're seeing right now is not too much in the way of the rain right now, but it is quite windy. I mean, you can probably see my hair is blown quite a bit, and it is windy and continuing with those gusts that are sometimes getting up over around 40 miles an hour. So quite breezy here at times as we move through. Now, one of the big concerns here in Camp Ellis is mainly going to be any potential flooding or coastal erosion. If you live live here, you know it. This area notoriously gets flooded a lot, and we've lost much of the beach, and we actually did a restoration project back in the 2010s to kind of help fix that. That's going to be something we watch out here for as we go through the day. Luckily, right now, astronomical tides are low, and you also just your tides in general. I mean, low tide this morning is at 6:44 a.m., so it's going to be pretty low for now. But as we head through the rest of your day and get into your afternoon, we're going to also start to notice everything starting to pick up a little bit more in the sense of your tides getting to high tide this afternoon. We're going to also see those winds continuing, so we're going to continue to watch this here as we go through the rest of your afternoon and evening to really see what's continuing to happen as everything starts to pick up a bit more, the winds start to pick up even more as well. We'll continue to watch this, but right now, live in Camp Ellis, I'm meteorologist Aaron Myler. Now let's send it over to Donovan Lynch, who is over in Washington County. Hey, Donovan.
Hi, Aaron. Well, we're here in Cutler, which is, again, about 15 miles away from the Canadian border and about 53 miles east of Bar Harbor. And as Todd said, this is where we're going to see the brunt of the rain and wind. And over the last 30 minutes, we've seen a lot of sporadic rain and wind. Right now, conditions are not too uncomfortable. The rain is moderate. The wind, is not a problem at this instant. But the thing about this storm that I've observed so far is in an instant, a gust of wind can come and knock your hat off. I can't estimate how fast those gusts are, but we're also learning a little bit more about the impacts that this storm is already starting to have in Washington County. Versant reporting 2,800 power outages in the area, and we're definitely going to keep you updated as we learn more about those numbers. As far as flooding is going, again, we didn't see much flooding beyond just pooling on the side of the road when we were driving into Cutler. Branches are not cluttering the roadways as of yet. Of course, that could change. Leaves are coming down, and we will be in the area monitoring the storm as it continues to churn across Washington County this morning. Chloe, back to you in the studio.
All right, Donovan Lynch and Cutler, thank you. A possibility for widespread power outages means many people will be firing up generators at some point this weekend. If you do, there are several safety tips to keep in mind. Our Zach Blanchard reminds us what they are.
With power outages top of mind right now, you might be thinking about backup power and how to safely use a generator at your home. First, choose the right generator by adding up the power requirements of all the appliances you want to plug in. Don't overload a generator. You may want to choose a generator that produces more power than you actually need. Keep the generator out of the rain and under a covered structure like a tarp to avoid electrocution. And to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, keep the generator outside away from windows and vents. And make sure your home's carbon monoxide alarms are installed and up to date. You can find more information on generator safety at redcross.org.
Now, Zach mentioned keeping your running generator out of the rain, but that does not mean using your attached garage as a cover. On windy days like today, even the slightest breeze can push carbon monoxide fumes from your gas-powered generator back into your house. The generator should be far away from any living areas. Many people like to visit beaches during weather like this, but some towns and communities in our state are telling people to stay away today. We'll have more on that next.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia, call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.
Custom Ink helps us celebrate and drive our students' achievements with custom gear. They love Custom Ink's different styles and designs. We love how Custom Ink makes the process simple with their easy-to-use design lab, expert artists ready to help, and unbeatable customer service. Custom Ink allows our kids to show everyone their accomplishments and the pride they have in our school. When we place an order, I know they got our back, so we can focus on the kids.
Custom Ink has hundreds of products to help you feel connected. Upload your logo or start your design today at customink.com.
Mom Squad every week right here on your streaming app.
The storm surge may make some of you want to get out and surf this morning, but public safety officials say do not do that. Many beaches and water access points are closed to keep people out of the water because of strong waves and riptides. Scarborough Beach State Park will be locked down until at least 9 o'clock this morning. Park officials say there are no lifeguards on duty and that Scarborough EMS does not have a boat in the water. You can check the park's Facebook page for updates about whether it will be open later this morning. All beaches in the town of York are closed today as well and will remain that way until sunrise tomorrow. Public safety officials say water rescue by local, state, or federal emergency responders will most likely not be possible during this storm. A few other closures to know about. The Rockland Fire Department says you won't be able to get onto the Breakwater Access Trail in Jetty today. Biddeford's public beaches will be closed through Sunday morning, and you can't park in the lots either. It's the same story in Agunquit. The police department there says beaches will reopen tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Overall, for everyone's safety, the advice is to stay away from the ocean today. Now let's head out to Bar Harbor for a live update from meteorologist Dana Osgood. She's been out there all morning. Good morning, Dana.
Good morning, Chloe. It is certainly a rainy and windy morning here at the Bar Harbor waterfront. You can see we've got the rain coming through, the wind coming in. Honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm getting water in my mouth when I try to talk. I did want to add on that Acadia National Park is closed down at this point. You will not be able to get into the park at all today, and the National Park Service says that they will review when it is safe to do so, and then they will reopen the park. Now, Todd mentioned earlier that Lee has been downgraded at this point to a post-tropical storm and is going to start behaving more like a nor'easter, but that means there are still going to be dangerous conditions, especially here in down East Maine. So it started raining here right around 2 in the morning, and we've been gusting to around 20 miles per hour or so. Right now, the sustained winds are about 12 miles per hour or so, and oh, that's a pretty good one. I think I'm gonna lose my hood. So the wind speeds are going to be increasing as we go into the afternoon. So this is going to get worse, so you wanna be careful. If you're going to be out at all, I would really just advise staying inside if you can. Versant and CMP have reported several hundred outages at this point in terms of power, and they are expected to be out of power until they can start to get things cleaned up. So overall, it is a rainy and windy day out here. Todd, I hope things are a little bit drier in the studio today.
Yeah, just a little bit, Dana. Dana's our newbie, her first experience out there in the elements in a storm, and she's doing a great job. But, you know, it's a little wild on the down east coastline already. Over 2,000 power outages, Donovan reporting that. Dana getting knocked around by wind and rain. We have tropical storm warnings up throughout most of Maine. I will give you the latest and what to expect coming up. Maybe not the best day to do some fishing weather-wise, but you know, sometimes those fish hit the bait a lot harder with these big pressure changes. So maybe it is a good idea to get out there and try to land a few. We've got big old fish also coming up right after the commercials.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia, call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.
Daily Blast Live is more than a talk show. They're family. The hosts are relatable, entertaining, and authentic.
We're all going to be like, what?
Engaging the audience with powerful stories and talking to the stars.
Turn up the notch on that.
It's like I'm on the verge of tears.
Thank you so much for doing this.
It's so interesting.
It's time to be a part of the DBL family.
I'm so proud of our DBL Nation.
Me too. Watch DBL on our station's streaming app.
Mom Squad, every week, right here on your streaming app.
It's the Big Old Fish Show with Kurt Craddy.
We've seen a lot of 4 and 5 pound bass on Big Old Fish, but a 7-pounder is rare indeed. Charlie Moulton had to travel all the way from Colorado to catch this one on Mousom Lake back in July. Maverick's not his call sign, it's his name, and fishing is what he does. His secret is a Minecraft rod. It's built only in the nether and fortified with the blood of Endermen and creepers. Trust me, it will catch the fish, especially on Pushaw Lake. Meanwhile, 11-year-old brother Remington Hogan caught this beast while on Egg Pond with his family. This was their annual Christmas in July celebration. They eat trash can turkey, swim, and fish. Sounds like my kind of shindig. Remington caught his Christmas wish, 3.5 pounds of Christmas wish at that. Derek Drake out at Pushaw with a 4-pack this day. 1 + 3 makes 4. Rangeley Lake is where you'll find the Day family. 3-year-old Henry Day with his first catch ever. At just 1 year older is Connor Day. This is his first fish. And then we have 9-month-old Lucas Day. This was his first time fishing, and I think he's got the fisherman's stance down pat. Now, where's all the fish at? If you got a big old fish to show off, tell me your fish story. Send a pic or video directly to me, Kirk.Craddy at newscentermaine.com. And for the love of all things with float rope, please put big old fish in the subject line. And even though it makes all the word wizards choke when I say it, fishing is fun, catching is funner. Tight lines, everyone.
Welcome back, everyone. It is 5:46 this Saturday morning, and this is a live look right now at Katahdin. We can see kind of choppy waters there. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the bigger lakes, will be, like you say, choppy.
Yeah.
They're not going to be like the ocean,
right.
But you're going to get some whitecaps out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a little dicey. I can't tell you how many inquiries, emails, texts, social media questions about pulling boats,
Right.
and I just told it better to be safe than sorry.
Yep.
And a lot of them were from people who have boats on lakes too. There aren't as many moorings in lakes. There's a lot of dockage stuff kind of thing. But still, why not just get it out of there just to be safe? Just to be safe. Here's the latest on Lee. Lee, no longer a tropical system, just in from the Hurricane Center. They have considered this to transition now and become more of a nor'easter type storm. But the messaging is still the same. Wind whipping from the north all day long, so we have power outage concerns all day long. And we already have a few thousand in down east Maine where the winds are strongest. It's going to be a wet morning for most of us, and then the rain and showers will be tapering off this afternoon. So the flood risk will be confined to down east areas, also where the heaviest rain will fall. We're already getting some big waves along the coastline, and high tide between noon and 1 o'clock. There's going to be beach erosion. Thankfully, this time of the month, our tides are not running astronomically high, so we'll be able to absorb a storm surge and not have major problems along the coast. There still will be some washover and some splashover during that high tide cycle in the middle of the day, but nothing like crazy. Like what we had with that December storm, if you recall, last year, right before Christmas time. So again, post-tropical Lee, it's still packing a punch, though, with winds near the core at 80 miles per hour, but it is forming some fronts and looking more like a typical nor'easter. If I didn't tell you, and if you didn't know that this was a warm month, September, you'd be like, oh, that kind of looks like a January or a February storm, and we're going to get a foot of snow. Let's hope we get a foot of snow this coming season, because I'm a big snow lover. Official track from the Hurricane Center still keeps it into Nova Scotia, right around Yarmouth. So that's where most of the really bad stuff will occur. But things are spreading back to the west, and the wind field is pretty big, and we're starting to get that leading edge of rain work into the coastline and inland too. In fact, some of these showers are starting to come down along the coast here in Portland and for York County. And it's pretty steady too through York County and through Sebago Lake and on up to Lewiston, Auburn. Nothing very heavy though at this point. There are some heavier showers working across Penobscot Bay. So Camden and Lincolnville, you're seeing some steadier rain. But easily the steady and heaviest rain is from Bangor back through Hancock and Washington counties. And again, this is where most of that will be occurring during the day. There's a lot of dry air in place over Maine. So as these bands work back to the west, they get chewed up. And the rain won't be steady in nature all day long. It'll become more showery later this morning. And this afternoon, I do not expect much rain at all for the western half of the state. It's the eastern half getting drenched by tropical-like downpours. Wouldn't be shocked if we see some late-day sun near the New Hampshire border, and perhaps an equally dramatic sunset like we had last night. Did you see that? That was insanely cool. All rain moves out of here by midnight tonight. Tomorrow's going to be much, much better. So rain amounts could top 2 inches in Washington County. That's where I'm most concerned for flooding. There could be some roads that get compromised or culverts, so detours are possible in down east Maine. As we look across New England, really the only places that are seeing tropical storm force winds, which are 39 miles per hour or greater, P-Town out on the Cape and Nantucket, which has been very windy for the last 12 hours, close to 50 mile per hour gusts there. For us, right now, there's more bark than bite. We're starting to gust, though, up closer to 30 miles per hour in all communities. And again, a few outages have already occurred. So our threshold is lower because we have leaves on trees and the ground is already wet, so those root systems are not locked in there. We can topple trees easier. 40 to 60 mile per hour gusts during the middle of the day. Late this morning through mid-afternoon, that's when I think we'll have the greatest chance to get some power outages around here. So hopefully you did some prep work on that. Hopefully we don't get a lot, but we're already starting to get some. So we are going to lose power in communities as we head through the day. All winds will settle down after sunset, and they will be a non-issue tomorrow. Tomorrow with that sun back out, it'll be a nice breeze out of the west. Check out some of these wave heights, 23 feet, 36 feet south of Nova Scotia. And double-digit waves are starting to propagate into the Gulf of Maine. And we have some big ones crashing along the coastline right now. Look at that, a 10-footer off of Cutler right now in down east areas. Marine forecast, tropical storm warnings are up. Seas will grow up to about 20 feet. And the winds will be out of the north, gusting to 50 knots. Rainy and windy for the morning, and then this afternoon, it won't be as rainy, but it'll stay windy, temps in the 60s. Tomorrow's beautiful, expecting some more rain here. Monday into Tuesday, it'll be fairly steady there as well. And then the second half of the week is going to be gorgeous with a ton of sunshine, at times a little crisp, especially there on Thursday. And in the mornings too, we'll have temps in the 40s, perhaps some 30s out there.
Wow, getting there, moving
Getting
into fall.
there, yes. Not true classic fall just yet. No sign of a frost yet.
Okay.
But still, you know, a little taste.
We'll ease our way into it.
We will.
All right. Thank
We
you,
will.
Todd. Some of the events that were on our calendar for this weekend have been canceled, postponed, or altered in some way because of the storm. One of those is the annual Maine Children's Cancer Program Walk. It was set to happen today at Payson Park in Portland, but it is now completely virtual. The yearly event is meant to celebrate Maine kids and teenagers who are currently fighting cancer and blood disorders, as well as those who are in remission. It's also designed to remember those we've lost. This walk is a big fundraiser for the Maine Children's Cancer Program. We have information on our website if you would like to take part in the virtual walk. There are some events that are harder to postpone or make happen virtually, like weddings. News Center Maine's Sam Rogers dives into how venues and planners are working through the storm.
It's not just Mainers. Even barn animals aren't ready to coop up indoors Saturday.
You can't prepare enough, and then you also just have to be able to roll with the punches, too, because you never know what Mother Nature's going to throw at you.
Well, she's throwing a curveball at Pineland Farms in New Gloucester.
Our fingers are really crossed that it's going to miss the corn maze, but we'll see. Time will tell.
11,000 people enter through this maze each fall, but it and the outdoor center will be closed Saturday due to the forecast, moving these cows and a wedding indoors and out of the rain.
Here's the thing. It's all about your attitude.
Maria Northcott has been in the wedding industry for more than a decade and always makes sure there's a plan B.
And we are trained for this. We adapt to whatever arises.
Like a hurricane. Besides officiating a wedding, Northcott's job this weekend is to guide her clients through the unexpected.
And do it quietly and calmly so that the couple doesn't feel the intensity of it or doesn't have to be stressed out or freaked out.
Many people dream of that perfect sunset on their wedding day, but it's important to have that sense of adventure in your mind.
Just let it go and go with the flow. It will be magical no matter what happens.
Well away from the coast, the storm is washing out plans in western Maine too.
The safety of our team and our guests is our top priority.
While the Bethel Harvest Festival was postponed, the Sunday River Riverfest weekend series kicks off Saturday, but moving indoors.
And it really is just supposed to celebrate that unique spirit that defines fall in western Maine.
Saturday may be a bust, but there's still plenty of time to enjoy fall. Sam Rogers, News Center, Maine.
And I will actually be at my best friend's wedding later today. All right, we have more Storm Center coverage coming up in the next half hour. Plus,
this here is a statement piece. We're going to get the story behind the sphere coming up on Gardening with Gutner.
Attention military personnel, families, and civilians who were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. If you or a loved one lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune, call the Victims Justice Group now. You may be entitled to significant compensation. The U.S. government recently passed a law allowing servicemen and women, their family members, and civilian workers who lived or worked on the base at Camp Lejeune for at least 30 days to seek justice for injuries caused by toxic water. If you or a loved one suffered injuries associated with the toxic water at Camp Lejeune, including bladder, kidney, or liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, or aplastic anemia, call the Victims Justice Group now. Our attorneys will fight to get you the compensation you deserve for your pain and suffering. Military personnel, their families, and civilian workers who served, lived, or worked at Camp Lejeune from August 1953 to December 1987 may be eligible for compensation. Don't wait. Call our helpline now.